The 2025 preseason testing has officially wrapped up, and it's left us with more questions than answers. One of the biggest mysteries centers around Ferrari and what the Maranello-based team might be concealing. The third day of testing didn't unfold as they had hoped, raising concerns about their true performance. Meanwhile, McLaren has displayed remarkable speed and consistency, making them the team to beat. So, what will Ferrari's response be? Can they count on Hamilton's expertise to provide the crucial feedback needed to resolve the ongoing issues plaguing the SF-25? There's no doubt that some teams would have preferred a different outcome in Bahrain, particularly Ferrari and Red Bull. Both teams had more potential to showcase, but admitted they weren't getting the desired results from their cars. While Red Bull's struggles were somewhat anticipated given their drop in performance in 2024, Ferrari's challenges came as a surprise. Maranello entered the 2025 season with hopes of finally securing a championship, but early impressions from the SF-25 suggest it may not be as competitive as they envisioned. Team principal Fred Vasseur was quick to reassure fans, stating that there's no cause for concern. He pointed out that Bahrain's conditions were unusual and that any struggles the SF-25 faced on the cold tarmac may not persist when the team heads to Australia. Elaborating on this, Vasseur stated, "This year, we're transitioning from track temperatures of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius in Bahrain to approximately 45 degrees Celsius in Australia, so we might see a completely different outcome." However, there's no denying that the SF-25's new concept has raised questions about whether it truly has the potential to be a title-winning car. One major concern is that Ferrari's testing pace fell short of expectations, especially compared to McLaren. While teams tend to hide their true performance during preseason runs, McLaren is expected to unleash even more speed in Melbourne. The SF-25's drastic design overhaul is another talking point. Ferrari retained only about 1% of its predecessor's design for this year's car, meaning there's a steep learning curve. And with 2025 being the final season under the current regulations, there's little room for significant changes if something isn't working as planned. Ferrari has already planned upgrades for the SF-25, but until they arrive, the team must analyze their Bahrain performance to identify the key areas for improvement. One noticeable aspect of the 2025 Challenger is its stronger front end. This isn't necessarily tied to their adoption of the new pull rod suspension, but rather a shift in the car's load distribution. While this benefits front-limited circuits, it can be problematic on tracks that demand the opposite, such as Bahrain. This might explain why Ferrari isn't overly alarmed by their preseason performance, and why the projected 10th of a second gap to McLaren could actually be an encouraging sign. That said, many circuits on the calendar share Bahrain's characteristics, meaning Ferrari must expand their car's operating window if they want to stay competitive with McLaren. The team ran a light to medium downforce wing configuration, similar to McLaren, but noticeably lighter than Red Bull and Mercedes. As a result, certain handling issues, such as braking stability and setup inconsistencies, were more pronounced than anticipated. Addressing these concerns will be crucial if Ferrari hopes to compete at the highest level. Despite these challenges, the SF-25's potential has not been doubted. Both Hamilton and Leclerc have shared their initial impressions, and while Hamilton remains optimistic, his teammate has been more reserved. The seven-time world champion was pleased with the car's performance, though the tire degradation on the third day disrupted their race pace simulations. Hamilton commented, "Over the last few years, I've learned not to make quick judgments based on first impressions. Previously, it was easier to gauge a car's capabilities early on, but with modern designs, it takes time to fully understand. That said, this is the most positive feeling I've had in a long time. I like to dive deep and figure things out as we go, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're building a strong foundation, but we also know the competition is fierce. We won't truly know where we stand until race week, but there's work to do." Hamilton's cautious optimism is understandable, especially given that this is his first time driving a new car after more than a decade with Mercedes. His age, nearing 40, doesn't seem to be a factor as long as he remains motivated and capable of extracting maximum performance. However, Leclerc has taken a more measured approach, warning that there's still plenty of work to be done before the season opener in Australia. When discussing the SF-25's early performance, the Monégasque driver said, "We're seeing the numbers we expected, but Thursday afternoon and Friday were a bit more challenging in terms of balance. There's still a lot to refine. The weather played a significant role. Temperatures were lower than usual, and the wind was a factor. I'd rather wait before making any definitive predictions. Right now, our priority is improving the car's balance, as we struggled in the last 2 days. We'll see how things shape up in Melbourne. Leclerc's statements highlight Ferrari's urgent need to diagnose their car's weaknesses as quickly as possible. While the SF-25 appears to have the potential they expected, it may not be the substantial leap forward that fans and the team had hoped for. Preseason discussions suggested Ferrari had made significant strides and could challenge McLaren head-on, but on-track results tell a slightly different story. Of course, it's still early days, and preseason testing alone doesn't determine championship contenders. However, Ferrari's new car is generating mixed feelings among its drivers, which could be a cause for concern. Leclerc also pointed out that Bahrain's conditions were unusual, making it difficult to draw comparisons to previous years. He elaborated, "It's tough to get a clear read on the SF-25 because I don't think I've ever experienced conditions like this in Bahrain. It was colder and rainier than expected, which isn't typical for this track. So, it's hard to compare to past test sessions. During testing, you focus mainly on your own program. But of course, you keep an eye on what others are doing, even though you don't always know their true pace. There are still a lot of unknowns, so we have to take these results with a grain of salt." Despite the lingering uncertainties, optimism remains high within the Maranello camp. The team has invested heavily in the SF-25's development, and it will be fascinating to see how their new design stacks up against the competition. McLaren is expected to be one of Ferrari's closest rivals, but Mercedes' statements suggest that Russell and Antonelli could also play a disruptive role, potentially snatching race wins and strong finishes away from the frontrunners. With all this in mind, what do you think about Ferrari's efforts to address the SF-25's issues? More importantly, do you believe they were sandbagging more than other teams during Bahrain testing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're interested in McLaren's latest developments and Piastri's recent headline-making statements, check out the video appearing on your screen now.